Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Laney, the retired sheriff from Cass County, North Dakota, and the current vice president of national sales here at Turnkey Corrections.
And I'm Lauren Matthews, and I'm the current social media and content specialist for Turnkey.
And you are listening to Jail Talk. And on part one of this series, we are here with the good sheriff of Cass County, North Dakota, the new sheriff of Cass County, North Dakota. I like to think I was good.
You did an excellent job, yes.
So anyhow, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about him. And we're here with Jesse Jahner, the current sheriff of Cass County, North Dakota, my successor when I left office, and a man very, very knowledgeable in a number of fronts, but the tactical front especially. He has an expertise in it, he has a specialty in it, and he's been sharing that with his communities. He's been sharing that, obviously, with other law enforcement agencies. But you've kind of found a niche, and we talked about in part one about teaching active shooter training within your communities and why it's so important and why that topic that nobody wants to talk about has to be talked about and has to be shared. And in part one, you really kind of just laid down the groundwork for why we did it, where it came from, the concept behind it, and where it's grown to. And like anything, as law enforcement, okay, how do I do it now? How do I make this happen? And so today, what we're going to talk about on part two is about the implementation, and so that each of you can walk away from here and say, I want to do that. And this is, and now I have a bit of a roadmap on how I can implement that. So let me ask you this, Sheriff. What do you think are some of the first steps in implementing an active shooter program within your community?
Sure. Excellent question. When we started putting this together, there were a lot of things that we had to work through to get it up and running. The first thing was, of course, to make sure that we had a good program to work with, and that we were teaching what we felt was the right content. I've attended a lot of different active threat courses, active shooter courses, throughout my career. And one thing that I did notice about a majority of them is they were failing to meet that medical piece within the teaching. And so certainly we wanted to bring that. And what I mean is, oftentimes in these situations where most people lose their lives is in that time frame from when the incident occurred and when we can get medical support into them. Because as we all know, as law enforcement, medical personnel, ambulance personnel, they're not going to come into a situation where the scene is not safe. And so that was part of getting this implemented. So it was a matter of putting the class together. I wanted to implement that medical portion in there. Mm-hmm. And so I reached out and looked at who can we partner with? Who could we work with within our community and build a relationship, but then also use their expertise and bring it to the teaching. And so when I was starting this thing, I reached out to a local medical center and located that person. And so they come out now and teach that with me. So that was one piece. I just wanted to make sure that we had the proper instruction for the course.
And even prior to that, I remember back when I was there, and you actually taught the entire Cass County staff. It was a mandatory class we all had to go to, and you used the medic off the SWAT team.
Yep.
Kayla, I believe her name was.
Yep. At that time, and I was still active on SWAT because you were the sheriff and I was captain. I was still on the SWAT team at that point. Yep. And so I reached out because they obviously had training for that type of environment. And so, again, that was the first part, was making sure that I had the proper people teaching the course with me. Then it was a matter of reaching out to the agencies in the area and making sure that they were on board. And we partnered with them. We put this grant together. We included them in the grant. We let them know kind of what we were going to be teaching and instructing so that they were on board with it. And then,
so for our listeners, the grant that you're talking about, where would they go find something like this, or how could they find a grant like that?
Yeah, so we were pretty fortunate in this particular grant. The medical person that I had reached out to was able to secure a grant through their hospital. Okay. And so that's how we secured that particular grant. I haven't gone out and researched other grants. I'm assuming maybe there's some out there, but that's how we found this one. So,
but I think your message with that is that you talk to your community as a part of that community partnership, community building, find out what's out there. There might just be a philanthropic member of the community or somebody, from one of the businesses says, I want to put my name on that. Here's $1,000, here's $5,000, here's whatever the case may be. That's, again, it kind of really ties into that community partnership part of it.
Exactly. I mean, when you start doing things like this and people start understanding the importance of it, whether, community members or businesses, they're going to want to be part of it. And so, yeah, I've had people come up with some of the businesses that we've taught this at, and they've asked how they can help. So, certainly as we move forward, we may look to reach back out to those individuals. Right now, we're pretty good with the grant that we have. And really what we're using that grant for is to purchase equipment for the businesses. So when we teach this course, we give them ideas on how they can, for example, barricade a door. Because that's part of the class is being able to properly barricade themselves in a room and secure that door so the shooter can't make it into the room. Another piece of that is an evacuation piece. So tools on how we can, break windows and evacuate out of a building and stuff like that. So this grant goes towards putting those tools together. So when we go teach this at a business, we leave one survival bag with the business for free. And that's a good starting point for them if they want to begin to put an emergency response plan together for their business. Now they have something to work off, and they know where they can purchase these items and what they would need to purchase.
Well, I remember that bag was pretty impressive when you looked at it. And it's just not something that maybe when you're sitting around your office, whether you work for a concrete manufacturing company, you work for a construction company, you work for a medical billing company, you work for an electrical company, you all have different work environments and different missions that you do. But what's in those bags is universal. And I don't care what your work environment is, the bags are universal. And maybe you have a 3-person office and you only need one bag, or you have 1,500 employees in 10 buildings, you need to go out but that bag that you left behind was your roadmap. It's like just now multiply this by 10, 15, 20, whatever you need.
Yeah, and it really is. There's just some really basic things in there. I know we can't show you guys the bag right now because we don't have it in front of us, but it's really some basic tools in there. And the whole idea behind it is to look at some basic things in your environment, because you got to be able to adapt to your environment in a quick response in order to protect yourself. And so we're just using some of those things to give people ideas.
Can you share with our listeners some of what you guys put in the bag?
So, one thing that we mention is an important tool that someone could use in an environment like this that almost every building has is a fire extinguisher. That's one of the tools that we have in the bag. A fire extinguisher can become a very effective tool. In a lot of ways. In a lot of different ways. I mean, we can use it to defend themselves as a weapon, whether they're using it to strike someone or using the chemical agent that's inside to obstruct someone's vision or something like that. So something as basic as that, something as simple as a strap that we have in the bag that you can use to help fortify a door, whether it's tying off the arm at the top of the door or being able to secure the handle somehow to, either by you holding it or attaching it to something else. So it's just really basic tools, but the whole idea behind it is to, number one, leave those tools behind, but then also show people how we looked at these basic tools and we were able to adapt them to a serious situation where people could protect themselves.
Excellent.
Well, all of us here at Turnkey participated in your training, and it wasn't just you. You brought a nurse with you. And you touched on it a little bit, but can you kind of elaborate on how you set up that connection and the importance of making sure you have that connection?
Yeah, thanks for bringing us back to initially, Sheriff Laney had asked how we had put this together, and I think that ties right back into that, in the fact that, reaching out to the medical personnel, like I had mentioned, and bringing them on board with the teaching, kind of just showing that collaborative effort in how we worked with another business to go teach another business, so to speak, right? And working collaboratively to do that. And so on this particular incident, it was a no-brainer for me to reach out to someone that had medical knowledge to bring that into our training, because again, I really find that as an important piece to this instruction, because we could show people how to protect themselves, but if we have someone inside a business that's injured and we can't get medical help to them, that's where my concern comes in, because sometimes people don't have a lot of time to get that medical treatment to survive that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you touched on this, Lauren, that training that you brought here. And obviously I had the connection with you and been through your training. And I knew it was exactly what we were looking for here and asked you to come share with our staff. And it was eye-opening, I think. The way Sheriff Jahner teaches his classes is very involved. And it's you're in the classroom. And there's one of the things and some people might say, boy, that's cruel or that's rough. But what was one of the most eye-opening experiences for you, Lauren? And I had probably something to do with that was when we did the interactive part with that Nerf gun.
Yeah, I mean, because you go, coming from being in school, you kind of go through the training, but it was nothing compared to this. I mean, we kind of talked about that before the show, how in the past years, a lot of the training is shut off the lights, hide in the corner. But having a different perspective and then actually going through what it could potentially sound like, what it could, you talk about, all of the senses that you'll experience. And I think that was the most eye-opening, was actually going through like what it could sound like, because you can talk about it all day long, but obviously no one wants to actually experience it, but to be a little bit prepared to actually experience it is a completely different training.
Yeah.
And to be upfront, I think, and Jesse, if you could talk about this a little bit too, that ties into exactly what Lauren said, and because your training is so interactive, and you teach more of an options-based kind of lockdown. You don't sit down. In fact, you teach just the opposite of hide in the corner and wait to get shot. You teach something very, very different. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because this, as our listeners decide, what do I want to teach in my community? I think this helps kind of them to kind of sit and think, okay, what do I want to teach, and what are we teaching in our community, and how can I make us better?
Yeah, and there's a lot of different thoughts right now out there on teaching this stuff. But one thing I would like to kind of elaborate on is a lot of them are basically the same if we look at them. I mean, there's people out there teaching run, hide, fight. There's people out there teaching get out, hide out, take out, or get out. And then there's people teaching what we're teaching, which is options based. And so they all kind of work on the same principles, that doing something is better than doing nothing.
Right.
And that was kind of the old thought process, right? It was locked down. We have a situation like this. If it was in a school, teachers would get up, they would go lock the door to the classroom. They would get the students and move them all in one area of the room, and then kind of just sit there and hope that the shooter doesn't get inside the room. But, unfortunately, if the shooter is able to make it in there, everyone's located in one location, and that shooter can do a lot of damage real quickly. And so what we realized, and it's taken us a lot of years to figure it out, unfortunately, that lockdown doesn't work. So we're bringing this options-based program is what we're teaching, and that really works off of the principles that people have options. We don't want them to no longer just sit there and lock down, right? We want you to, hey, if you can evacuate and you can get away from the incident and be safe that way, then that's what you should do. If you can't do that and you have to barricade, we don't mean just locking the door. We mean getting up and barricading the door so no one can get through it. And then the last piece of that is worst case scenario, right? That shooter is able to make it into the room, and now you have to defend yourself and take back control of the situation. And so that's really what we are teaching. And the best way to teach that is to make it interactive, like you mentioned, Lauren. And that is, people can go up there and we can just teach off of a PowerPoint, but without really experiencing what it feels like to be in a situation where a shooter is going to come in and they're actively looking to hurt you, like we did in our course. It gives you that feeling of helplessness, right? Because you didn't know prior to us teaching the responses what the appropriate response might be. And then so we show you that, how vulnerable you can be, and then we give you or do the training and show you what the options are. And you felt a lot different, I'm guessing, after that, after you had your options and you knew different things you could potentially do to protect yourself. And so, that's the interactive piece that you were talking about, is we want to make it be as realistic as possible and really have people experience that thing. And you had mentioned senses. So a lot of people, they might not know what a gun sounds like going off in a structure. And so bringing that type of experience to people so they understand that.
And tying it back to that medical part of it, because that's what struck when you were asking that question, and I kind of was remembering back that today, and you had me help teach the class, and it was kind of like old days again.
Yeah, it was.
And when I went through, I was his shooter, and I went through with everybody locked down, and it was literally like sitting ducks, and I put a number of rounds into a number of people, and like any shooter out there who has maybe a particular beef to pick with somebody, shot somebody more than they shot others, but they were trying to do that, and I think the whole room afterwards was like, oh my gosh, we were sitting ducks, and and then what came into it after that not only emphasized the options-based part of it, but emphasized the medical part of it, which was Lauren's original question, that having, her name was Vicky, and she was amazing, and being able to show some of that treatment methods and this life-saving methods, I think just showed everybody how real this was. And we were like every other business. You came in and taught our business, and now you've taught businesses galore. And I could just tell you the reaction that we saw, and that I saw my coworkers. I'm not in the law enforcement world anymore. Before, I used to sit on that side of the stage with you and teach. Today, or that time, and it wasn't today, it was a few months ago, I got to see now what it was like to be on this side of it with my coworkers, people I work with every day, people I care about immensely. And to see that kind of that shock in your guys' faces was like kind of spooky. And then at the same time, to see that kind of light bulb come on, like, I don't have to take this, and then knowing how to treat it medically and all that. And then, I know our owners were very appreciative when you left the bag, and then we prepared ourselves further from there, which is what your goal is.
Yeah. And, and I just want to go back to a few things you mentioned with the actual interactive portion of it. And that is that it does really open people's eyes to see how vulnerable you can be in this type of situation. But it also, once we do the training, gives you perspective that you can protect yourself if you really need to. And most people don't think of that on a day-to-day basis. And that's why this training, sometimes people look at it like, do we want to bring that training in? It's because you're training a whole different perspective that you don't think about on a day-to-day basis. And that is a life or death situation. Most people don't want to think about that. But being able to prepare yourself mentally, work through those situations is just going to help you with any personal safety issue that you might encounter going forward.
Absolutely. We talk a lot about what happens, now, as you talk to the businesses and all that, as we all know, a reality of our life, good, bad, or ugly. And again, we could spend hours talking about good media, bad media, those that have an agenda, those that, try to truly be journalists and tell both sides of the story. They're all out there. We have a lot of activists in the media now that claim to be a journalist. And then we have a lot of community-based, local news agencies that just want to report what's going on in their community. And I think we were always blessed. We had very supportive media. They certainly would call us to task when as they should, as they need to, but they also weren't afraid to tell our story. And I know all of you out there who are thinking about, because that's something you're going to have to think about. If I implement this, what is my media going to say? What is my community? Because let's face it, a lot of times the media is the eyes and the ears and the voice of the community. How did you obtain media support, and what's your advice to our listeners out there about media influence in what they want to do? Another
excellent question, because as you mentioned, the media can really help get messages out, and sometimes the messages can sometimes be destructive. We're very fortunate, like you said, in our area to have supportive media. And they've helped us in a lot of different ways in getting pertinent information out to our citizens when we've needed them to do that. One way that I use to help get information out to businesses, to our community that we're doing this, was to partner with our media, our local media. And what I mean by that is I reached out to them and I offered to put them through this class. And I had a number of them that different radio stations and stuff that took me up on the offer, and they went through, and that was an opportunity for me to, number one, display the class, but then also, even if it wasn't questions about the class, just be there in front of them where they could ask me other questions pertinent to law enforcement and really do education. And so, why wouldn't we want to do that? If they can get that message out for us, they're the ones that can reach a lot of listeners.
Absolutely.
And so working together collaboratively with them helps us get that message out, but can also help them on the scene. When they come on a scene, they understand what we're doing. They can report on it maybe a little bit more efficiently. So it was a win-win in whatever direction you approached it from. And, on top of that, the local media was just also getting the information out through our social media. We do that oftentimes where, whether it's an educational piece, whatever, we're constantly getting information out on our social media sites to prepare our citizens or get them that information.
And so many times, and it used to frustrate me a lot when I listened to law enforcement leaders, I'm not going to talk to the media. I don't care what they have to say. I had a very, very different philosophy, as you know, because I was in front of the media a lot. I had you in front of the media a lot, and a lot of our staff, because transparency in our business is everything. And transparency builds that trust. And what I'm hearing you say, there's very much that was part of the good that came out of it, was not only did they understand it, they helped tell the story, story, but it shows I have nothing to hide from you. What we're trying to do for our community is pure. It's good. It's another form of readiness, and that comes back to that term partnership.
Yeah, and it is very much like you said, an opportunity, a really good opportunity, especially again as we mentioned in part one in today's environment, is transparency is huge. If we're keeping information from our citizens, it doesn't matter who you are. That looks strange. It looks like you're trying to hide something, right? So if we can get that information out right away, and understanding that there are times or there's some information that we can't release because it's an active or ongoing investigation or something of that nature. But even if we have that, we can still get on the media and explain why we can't give them that information or why this information can't come out at the time. But being transparent and updating and keeping them in tune with what we're doing is really a key piece right now to building relationships and strengthening law enforcement's relationships with our citizens. Absolutely.
Totally agree.
Well, you've been doing this training for some time now. What have you seen that your community has gained from doing this training? Why is it a positive thing that you're bringing to the community?
Yeah, boy, there's so many positive things that have come from it. Again, we mentioned this in session one, just the partnership and the collaboration that we've had with our businesses. I mean, I've met had the opportunity now through doing this to meet numerous business owners in our community, employees in our community, and really understand their concerns because I'm there. They feel more comfortable talking to me and bringing maybe issues, concerns that they have, maybe experienced with law enforcement in the past, or just questions on how we do things. It gives us that area or that time with them where we can address those things. And so that's been extremely important. It's helped on our law enforcement side because, again, as I mentioned previously, if our businesses are responding a certain way in a critical incident and we're coming as law enforcement to respond to that business, we're all working together now. We all understand what everyone is doing and why they're doing what they're doing. So it speeds up response time and we can get a better response to them. And so, and then working with the other entities or other agencies that we've partnered with, it builds collaboration that way when our officers get to know each other a little better. And so there's just so many positives from doing it. And we've been fortunate to really build those relationships.
And I would encourage any one of you, reach out, research that, the different styles that are going on out there, the different ways to communicate. As somebody who had to walk that walk every day for so many years, and you're worried about that impact, and you're worried about what's going on, and you're worried about that feedback you could get from the media. I can tell you from experience, from unleashing what he did back then, and now watching him at his time as sheriff, as just his growth as far as his impact on the community. Every one of us want to leave our departments and leave our legacy better than what we found it, and that's what we want our legacy to be. And I strongly encourage you. I know sometimes it's intimidating to think of trying new things or to go outside your comfort zone, but at the end of the day, we all had a responsibility to make our communities the safest we can be. And if we don't grow with that, if we don't try new things, then you don't grow. And we're not here to tell any one of you how to run your community, because you know your community better than anybody, and you're the one that you woke up on election morning and your community told you, if you're the sheriff, that we are picking you to be our chief protector, to be our chief law enforcement officer. And if you're a command officer out there listening to this, your sheriff decided that you need to be a leader within his or her organization. And that's, I guess, my challenge. And one of the reasons why we did this is that we want to be able to bring something to you to go back out there and do that. And I strongly recommend, while anytime you talk about active shooter, it's a topic nobody wants to tackle. Nobody wants to think about people getting hurt and killed in the environment. But you can sit and cringe from it, or you can go out and do something about it. And I challenge each and every one of you to go out and do something about it. Reach out to men like this, to sheriffs like this, and let's learn from each other, and let's make our communities safer. And we are coming to the end of the episode. I could sit here. I'd love to keep you here for hours and talk about. We have a few things we could cover over the years, and I bet we'll probably be inviting you back down.
Hopefully you do.
Yeah, we're excited. Our user conference is going on right now. You're actually teaching this class to all of our attendees that are here, anybody that wants to hear about it. And so there's just a lot of ways to learn about it. We're excited to have you here, and we'll probably have you back on the show. But I guess I just want to give you a platform here as we come to the end of the show. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank both of you guys for getting me on the program today. I think this program that you're doing is an excellent way to get information out to area law enforcement on the different topics that are so pertinent to what law enforcement does every day. So thanks for inviting me here today and giving me this opportunity.
And we have a lot of fun with it, and it's a labor of love for us because, for exactly what you said, we just want to help make a difference. So thank you as well.
And I, of course, always want to thank you for the opportunity that you've given me over my career, because you obviously, as a leader and a sheriff, my sheriff at the time, had a succession plan in order. And part of that was continuing to work with the community. And that's why we worked together to get this program going. And I think that it's just been an excellent way to build relationships with our community, with our other area law enforcement agencies, and just bring that education to them, working with the media. And so I would just encourage anyone who's watched this program today, doesn't matter if you're the sheriff, other commanders within your organization, to look for ways that you can do this, so you can bring education to your community and help them understand what we're doing, why we do things the way that we do them, and then build those relationships. It's so important right now with the national perception of law enforcement, and we really have an opportunity. I look at this as an opportunity with everything that's kind of been negatively going on in regards to our profession.
Absolutely.
This is a way for us to rebound, right, and get some education out and start building those relationships again and become stronger and hopefully move forward. And we all need to be forward thinking and look for better ways that we can do things and gain that support from our community, because without that, we don't exist. So I just appreciate, again, being able to be on your program today and getting this information out.
Well, as you always did, you always made me look good. The team that we built at Cass County is my most. People always ask, what's your proudest accomplishment? It wasn't all the awards. It wasn't the Sheriff of the Year, the President Awards, any of that. Those were nice, but it was the team we built, because the team we built is what earned those awards. And you made my succession plan pretty easy. So,
well, you gave me the opportunity. But we much like you said, it's teamwork, and we had to work together. And you and I had talked about many of those things before you had left. So, I think it just shows your leadership abilities and how you didn't just leave your community. You had a plan and how you wanted things to succeed from when you were in there as sheriff. So I appreciate those opportunities, and I think we've been successful at it.
I agree, and thank you. And you always want to make a difference, and I have the opportunity to talk to you all out there, and we're going to keep trying to do that. And speaking of teammates, my teammate has something to say.
Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at JailTalk Podcast, or you can email us at jailtalkpodcast@gmail.com.
I'm Paul Laney.
And I'm Lauren Matthews.
You've been listening to Jail Talk. We'll see you next time.